Good evening. This is a City of Missoula City Council meeting for July 11th, 2022. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. And if everyone could turn their cameras on, thank you. Marty, if you could do roll call, and I will just preface it by saying we are still having hybrid meetings. If you want to join this meeting virtually, you can go to the City of Missoula website and go to the new meetings, to the meetings page, and find the agenda for this meeting and click on the link to join. You can also send an email to council at, I'm going to forget the email address now. allcouncil@ci.missoula.mt.us. Got it. And you can also call into us. Phone number to call in is 21253-215-8782. And you can leave a message for us. So with that, Marty, could you do a roll call for attendance, please?
I'd be happy to. Stacy Anderson.
Present.
Here to Becerra. Present. Dan Carlino.
Present.
John Contos. I think John's absent. Jordan Hess.
Present.
Gwen Jones.
Present.
Christian Jordan.
Present.
Mike Nugent.
Present.
Jennifer Savage. I think she's absent. Amber Sherrill.
Present.
Sandra Vasica.
Present.
Heidi West.
Present.
And Mayor Engen is absent. Looks like we have a quorum.
Thank you. We will take public comment on items that are not on the agenda. If you want to come give public comment, just step up to the podium. Please tell us your name, and we try and keep people to 3 minutes. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Liam Seymour. I'm a resident of Ward 3. So on Wednesday of this week in a committee meeting, there's going to be a discussion and a vote on an easement for a property on Front Street. This is the last step in a process that has been going on for a while, but at the moment will displace about a dozen renters from their housing in what is really truly one of the only housing opportunities in that price range in the city. Project is not time sensitive or critical to any city planning that I know. And so I'm hoping and asking that members of that committee consider tabling this easement for at least a few months to give the tenants the time to find alternative in this truly terrible housing market, whether that's of a few months or until maybe the vacancy rate goes up to a more acceptable level in our community. I'm hoping that the members of that committee will at least consider this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public comment on items not on the agenda. Let me check those attending virtually, see if there are any raised hands. Okay. Seeing no other public comment on items not on the agenda, we'll go forward with the next item on the agenda, which is to announce the committee meetings. I believe we have no committee membership appointment or changes to committee agendas, but Marty, if you would go through the committee meetings for this Wednesday, please.
I am happy to. Let me share my screen here. Okay, City Council is going to be holding committee meetings on July 13th. That's this coming Wednesday. All of these meetings are being held by Zoom webinar. They are not in person. They are only virtual while we wait for our third courtroom to be built across the street at City Hall. Budget Committee of Budget and Finance Committee will meet from 9 a.m. to 11:15. Climate Conservation and Parks Committee will meet from 11:30 to noon. I usually talk about what they're going to talk about. So the Budget and Finance Committee will be taking up the annual assessments for Street Maintenance District Number 1 that's located downtown Missoula for fiscal year 2023. There will be an agreement with Baker Tilly Municipal Advisory Services and a presentation of the mayor's fiscal year 2023 executive budget. The agenda lists the presenters, so we might want to check that out on our website. The Climate Conservation and Parks Committee will be considering an easement request near Kiwanis Park. The Public Safety, Health and Operations Committee will be meeting from 12:30 to 12:50. They'll be taking up Missoula Police Facility Planning, as well as a memorandum of understanding for the paramedic program in the fire department for 2022. The Housing Redevelopment and Community Programs Committee will meet from 1:05 to 1:20. They'll be taking up appointments to the Missoula Redevelopment Agency Board and appointments to the Affordable Housing Resident Oversight Committee. And finally, Land Use and Planning Committee will round out the day from 1:35 to 2:35. The two items that they'll be talking about are the city subdivision regulations. We're amending subdivision regulations to comply with state law, as well as making some administrative adjustments to those regulations. And they will also be taking up an ordinance that generally amends Title V entitled Business Licensing and Licenses and Regulations in order to reorganize definitions, update outdated process language, and incorporate cannabis licensing requirements as a result of legislative changes. It says in the cannabis, but it is as a result of legislative changes to that industry during the past legislative session. That would be the Montana legislative session.
Thank you, Marty. Next, we have the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda were approved in city council committees to be placed on the consent agenda to save time at council meetings by voting on them as a package. The city clerk will read the list aloud, so citizens watching on MCAT or YouTube will know what is on the consent agenda. We'll invite community comment on these items before we vote. Ms. Rabine, if you could go through the consent agenda.
Sure. Let's see. Tonight's consent agenda, let me look through here, has 5 items. The first is to approve accounts payable, to ratify accounts payable in the amount of $1,557,079.48 for checks that were dated and issued on July 5th of 2022. The second one is to approve accounts payable in the amount of $623,932.53 for checks that are dated July 12th of 2022. Number 3 is to issue a variance to resolution number 8024 and subsequent parks encroachment permit to Brian Weston for approximately 1,300 square feet encroachment from 2415 South Hills Drive into Puri Park in exchange for a permit fee of $3,140.63 with the funds to be the fund to be used explicitly for the improvement of Puri Park. Number 4 is to adopt a resolution relating to $6,897,000 of water system revenue bonds series 2022B, authorizing the issuance of those bonds and fixing the terms and conditions thereof. Number 5 is to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a memorandum of agreement with Spark One LLC for Concrete Way Water Main Extension Project at a cost not to exceed $4,000.
Thank you. Any comment from the public on the consent agenda? And if you're attending virtually, please raise your hand if you'd like to comment on the consent agenda. Seeing none, any counselor want to divide the question or anything like that? Ms. Jordan?
Thank you. I'm just wondering if we could pull the South, I just need to double check and make sure I'm asking the right part. If we could pull the 5.3 out and vote it on it separately, please.
Separate out item 5.3, of course.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Seeing none. Marty, if you could do a roll call vote, and we're dividing the question on item 5.3.
Okay, let's do the vote on the full consent agenda minus 5.3 first. So on the consent agenda, items 1, 2, 4, and 5, Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra, Becerra,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika,
Yes.
and West.
Yes.
Would any of you like to change your vote? That is, hang on just a second. Give me a tally here. That is 10 ayes and 2 absent. And now let's move to item number 3, just a moment. Okay, this is on that variance request at Perry Park. Becerra,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
No.
Nugent,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 9 ayes and 1 nay, and that passes.
Thank you. We have no comments from city staff, city agencies, community forum, neighborhood councils, boards, commissions, or authorities. We do have a special presentation of proclamation tonight, and it's perfect timing because it's going to be 97 degrees tomorrow. So this is a proclamation regarding Wildfire Smoke Ready Week. Whereas the city, Missoula County and the city of Missoula, Montana, whereas wildfire smoke is a serious and growing public health threat, and the more scientists learn about the dangers of smoke exposure, the more we need to act. And whereas wildfire smoke causes worsened asthma attacks, decreased lung function, worsened COPD symptoms, increased susceptibility to infectious disease, increased risk of heart attack and stroke, and increased hospitalizations and deaths. And whereas the National Interagency Fire Center is predicting significant wildfire potential throughout much of the western United States in 2022, including in regions that send smoke to our area. And whereas our adopted Climate Ready Missoula plan finds that our summers are becoming hotter and drier, wildfire season is getting longer, wildfire smoke is an increasing risk, and we need to enact strategies to mitigate harm. And whereas wildfire smoke can come indoors, creating unhealthy conditions, both outside and inside, and whereas it is possible to decrease the risk this smoke poses by creating cleaner indoor air spaces and reducing outdoor activities. And whereas public messaging focused on the dangers of wildfire smoke and how individuals can protect themselves plays an important role in individual preparedness during wildfire season. Therefore, be it resolved, we, Missoula County and the city of Missoula, do hereby proclaim July 9th through the 16th as Wildfire Smoke Ready Week to inform and educate Missoula County and city residents of the hazard that wildfire smoke presents and how to mitigate it. Dated the 7th day of July, signed by Mayor John Engen and County Commissioner Juanita Vero. And I believe we have some people who wanted to speak to this. Ms. Cheryl, did you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. I wanted to first thank Climate Smart Missoula for their work on this. And, you know, I don't think I need to talk about how we live with wildfire smoke to Missoula, but wildfire smoke is something that we kind of dread and then live with every summer. And, we need to learn to deal with it to some degree, and adaptation to climate change is an area of study and an important piece to, how we survive and how we thrive and how we keep a healthy community. So I think Amy is in the audience, and I'll let her say more, but I'm happy to see this resolution come forward. And I hope that everyone in Missoula will kind of be aware of the work of Climate Smart, their filters, and we have the Awareness Week, and I'll let Amy speak to kind of some of the other pieces of that. But I'm thankful for this resolution coming forward, and I hope it gets on everyone's radar.
Thank you, Ms. Cheryl. And I've got Amy Sillenberg with her hand raised. Good evening, Amy.
Hello, thank you, Council. I assume you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Amber, and thanks to all of you for entertaining this proclamation. I'm glad that the mayor was able to sign it and the Board of County Commissioners. Just to add to what Amber just mentioned, Climate Smart Missoula is part of bringing this work forward, but it's truly collaborative with you folks at the City of Missoula, Missoula County, Missoula City County Health Department, United Way of Missoula County, and the Missoula County Fire Protection Association are all behind this Wildfire Smoke Ready Week. So the week is really an opportunity to fill the airways and the newspapers and have be out and about in the community, helping people understand that there are ways to prepare for wildfire smoke, particularly with some easy to adopt practice. There's easy to get clean indoor air when it's smoky outside with some of these HEPA portable air filters, air purifiers. And so we're basically out in the community trying to help show folks that, yeah, there's things we can do. Over the years, we've learned a lot about the dangers of wildfire smoke, as the proclamation mentions, and we've also learned that there are ways we can stay healthy. So a lot of our work is really getting the word out in this next week. And then it's ongoing beyond that. Not everybody's going to hear our message. Not everybody's going to be able to afford to get a HEPA air purifier for their home, but we're out with our partners in the community, seeing what we can do to help those without the resources, and just kind of work on this year to year, making it a little bit better every year, because we will see wildfire smoke. Maybe not from fires right around here, but we get smoke from all over. I was just looking at the smoke maps, and a lot of the US is getting smoke from Alaska right now. So we get it from around. So there are ways to stay healthy. That's this collaborative partner group's effort. And we'll be out to lunch tomorrow. There's a wildfire smoke trivia night at Imagination Brewing tomorrow evening, if any of you folks want to join, or anybody that's listening. And we'll be at the farmers markets over the weekends, in addition to just kind of our general get the word out. So yeah, thank you. And I don't need to keep you any longer. I appreciate your support.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks so much for all of the great information. And yes, we're hoping it's a smoke-free summer, but fingers crossed. Okay, moving on. We have one item under final consideration for tonight. Items listed under final consideration have had a public hearing. The hearing was held open to allow time for additional public comment before final consideration and action by the City Council. The chairperson of the Standing City Council Committee will make a motion. We invite community comment on each item. Final consideration tonight, we have a resolution to annex and zone Fairway View Addition planned unit development. So first of all, with the planner, Spencer, are you here? And did you have anything additional to add beyond the presentation from last week?
Nope, nothing additional to add.
Okay, thank you. Were there any questions from council? I saw a hand go up and then it went down. Oh, Mr. Carlino.
Yeah, I was just curious if you all could explain a little bit more how we got to the zoning for this parcel that we're annexing in.
Yeah, so the parcel is located, so the parcel that we're annexing or proposing to annex This evening is located within the county adjacent to the existing parcel. This is resulting from boundary line relocation, which is exempt from subdivision process. It's the relocation of common boundaries to expand the existing city parcel. The city parcel is zoned within this PUD and is currently has been developed for a single family detached home or a single unit detached home. The annexation will be for 0.2 acres or approximately 8,000 square feet. We arrived at the zoning designation because this is the zoning that the existing city parcel is currently zoned for, and the location is served by a single access driveway, a single sewer line, and is mainly encumbered by a no access easement on the western side, and like no build zone for the majority of it or a large portion of it. So in addition, the annexation area that this is in proposes low density residential, and this site is most suitable for that, just given its location. I can bring up the parcel to demonstrate more what I am explaining here. Sorry. So this is the parcel.
So we're
Here?
not seeing a map yet. We're just
Okay.
seeing the city council meeting agenda link.
Let's do this then.
There we go. Okay.
So this is the county parcel, and this is the existing city parcel, currently served by a driveway with a no access easement on this side, and apologies for the. Okay, here we go. And this would be the section to be annexed. So there's the parcel is not highly suitable for more development, and would not meet the criteria to be zoned otherwise. So this is aligned with the growth policy recommendations, with our annexation policy, and overall with the existing site suitability.
Thank you, Mr. Stark. Any other questions from council? Sure, go ahead, Mr. Carlino.
So is it correct to say that, I'm 100% in favor of annexing this in, but is it correct to say that the proposed zoning would only allow for single family homes there, and I suppose Airbnb, bed and breakfast as well?
So the PUD doesn't, I'm not aware of the allowance for a tourist home at this location, but in my experience, and I can pull up the regulations for this particular PUD, but our general approach to PUDs is unless they're otherwise specified for bed and breakfast use or tourist home use, they're not allowed in the majority of PUDs, because the majority of PUDs were drafted at a time where tourist homes were not a regular use, and the bed and breakfast classification was what you would see most often. So I can't speak to details, but I would venture, if I were to give it, an educated guess, tourist homes would not be allowed here. I can follow up on that as well. Yeah, so the use would be controlled by the density, which I believe for this parcel would only allow for one unit, which is already existing on site.
Thank you. Mr. Hess?
Thanks. So it looks like slide 12, Spencer, is the criteria for zoning upon annexation. And can you, I mean, my recollection of these is that we have criteria that we have to follow under state law about what zone we bring something in under when we annex it. Is that correct? And would it be, well, go ahead. That's correct?
Yes, these are the three criteria we use to measure whether a parcel is suitable for annexation, and then what land use designation would be applied based upon the growth policy.
So as a follow-up to that, it would be inconsistent with these criteria and inconsistent with state law to bring it in under a different zone that didn't comply with the growth policy, essentially.
Staff's analysis is that the recommended zone district is in conformance with growth policy. So staff's recommendation is yes, this PUD zoning district, because that's from our review is the most consistent zoning district.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, seeing no other questions, Mr. Hess, we would need a motion.
Thanks. I would move that we adopt a resolution to annex and incorporate within the boundaries of the city of Missoula one certain parcel of land described as portion A of Lot A1, Fairview Way Addition, Lot A1, Lot A2, Fairview Way Addition, located in Section 1, Township 12 North, Range 20 West, Principal Meridian, Montana, as shown on Exhibit A and Exhibit B, and to zone the property Fairview Way Addition Planned Unit Development based on the findings of fact in the staff report, subject to the recommended conditions of annexation approval, and subject to an effective date for the annexation and zoning to occur at the time of the amended plat for 2020 MSS SEA 00021 is filed with the county clerk and recorder. And may I speak to the motion?
Let me call for public comment first, and then we'll return back to you. Is there any public comment on this motion? And if you are an attendee, if you raise your hand, if you're virtual, seeing no public comment, back to you, Mr. Hess.
Thanks. This is straightforward. This is inconsistent with our annexation policy and our growth policy. And as at the risk of being a broken record, I say that all the time, that we adopt plans and policies so that we can follow them. And so we have plans and policies adopted here and we are following them. It would be inconsistent with the growth policy and inconsistent with state law to zone this differently than is proposed or more densely than is proposed. And our growth policy was contemplates that housing is important, diversity of housing types is important, and climate is important. And having density that is removed from the urban core creates a climate impact by creating additional vehicle trips that we then have to support with infrastructure that's far from our urban core. So it's not the right place for density. It wasn't contemplated in the application, and it's not contemplated in the growth policy. So this is the correct zoning for this parcel.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Mr. Carlino.
I'm happy to support this motion, but I do think, like, as we're going through our code reform, we need to look at all areas of land that are residential, no matter how small, and re-legalize 2, 3, 4plexes. If the owner of this land wanted to build a duplex and open up another unit, it would be illegal under the proposed zoning. So I just want to point that out. Thanks.
Any other comments from council? And anyone attending virtually? Not seeing any raised hands. All right, we will have a roll call vote.
Okay, on the resolution to annex this parcel in the Fairway View Addition in the neighborhood of Foxton Court, Carlino,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
and Becerra.
Yes.
Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 10 ayes and 2 absent.
Thank you, Marty. Next item under public hearings, we do have one tonight. State law and city council rules set guidelines for inviting community comment in a formal way on certain issues. Following a staff report on each item, the city council and the mayor invite community comment. During COVID-19, the city council is holding the public hearing open for a week and then voting the following week unless there is a requirement for final action on the night of the public hearing. With the public hearing that we are opening tonight, we will take this up under final consideration on July 18th, a week from tonight. So on this item, I believe we have Jen Gress to present. Good evening, Jen.
Good evening.
And this is on city subdivision regulations, state law changes.
I am going to find the screen for you. How's that?
Great, we can see it.
Thank you. So again, just for the record, I am Jen Gress of Community Planning and Development and Innovation. And tonight we're holding a hearing on required updates to the city subdivision regulations with state law changes. I'll provide some background for you, explain the goal of this project, provide a brief overview of the relevant state bills along with other proposed amendments. I'll review the amendments and then close with comments that we've received. You have a list of amendments as part of the background information for this project. The document is called Subdivision Regulations State Law Changes Planning Board. And this is the same document the Planning Board reviewed and referenced. I'll be referencing item numbers from that document throughout the presentation. I'm not planning to go through every amendment in specific detail. However, I will be available for questions after the presentation. Montana state law establishes the minimum rules of review and submittal for subdivision projects, as well as the criteria they are reviewed by. And these minimums must be administered by local agencies as soon as they are in effect. Our office has been implementing state law changes since their adoption, even if they haven't been formally adopted into our local regulations. Montana state legislature meets every 2 years to discuss possible amendments to state law for various topics, including subdivision review. And since the last update to the city subdivision regulations following the 2013 Montana legislative session, there have been several changes to subdivision related state laws in 3 of the 4 subsequent sessions between 2015 and 2021. Missoula's current regulations do not reflect these updates, and staff have been implementing these changes using language taken directly from state law. We also looked at the bills from the 2015 session and determined that none of them applied to subdivision regulations. So the goal of this project is to update the subdivision regulations in a targeted manner. Because the upcoming comprehensive code reform process will focus on regulation alignment, process auditing, modernization, and innovation between all the city's land use regulations, these amendments will have a narrow scope. Amendments are limited to integrating legislative changes from the past 3 sessions. Changes will also correct obvious mistakes and update the document and department names. This scope will avoid duplicating efforts that will take place during the code reform process, will provide a clean starting point for the code reform process to build from, and will put our regulations in a more transparent place representing current review practices. The code reform process will result in a Uniform Development Code, or UDC, and that process typically takes about 2 years to complete and will coordinate multiple agency regulations such as subdivision zoning, road standards, parkland, and stormwater standards. Currently, the consultant has been contracted and the process is in its beginning stages, with the consultants having visited Missoula for a formal introduction during the week of June 27th. So this is a list of relevant bills by legislative year. Even though the regulations have not been included, again, in the local regulations, each one has been followed in practice as they have become effective at the state level. A couple of the more complex bills in 2017 included House Bill 245, having to do with timelines of final plats, and House Bill 445, which created a process for phase development projects approved after 2017. The 2019 bills were pretty straightforward and resulted in minor amendments, and we looked at 7 bills from 2021, but found that 2 of them pertain to other land use review acts, the sanitation and unit ownership acts. So 5 of the 7 bills have been integrated into the regulations. 2021 included a couple of bills requiring more complex amendments again. Those were Senate Bill 161 regarding expedited subdivision review and Senate Bill 174 regarding conditions of subdivision approval. So in addition to the legislative changes, staff has identified a number of amendments not specifically related to recent state land use legislation, but are necessary to include in this update. Some of these proposed changes will not be specifically addressed in this update in this presentation, but are shown in your reference materials. Changes not included in this presentation include cross-referencing the recently adopted Missoula City Public Works standards and specifications, update of the planning office and department names where appropriate, correcting the name of the growth policy to the city growth policy, change the name and number of reference documents called exhibits, and removal of the word "the" that was inadvertently left behind throughout the document when the office name was changed from the Office of Planning and Grants. Other items will be shown later in the presentation, one being proposed language to update requirements surrounding the amount of water runoff allowed for a parcel. These changes are in response to updates made by the Montana Department of Environmental Quality and to Circular 8. The others are in response to comments received. We're proposing to remove outdated language found in Article 8 and update the submittal format for final plat filing in Article 5. The relevant bills and housekeeping items affect every article of the subdivision except for, the subdivision regulations, except for Article 9, public and private improvements. Tonight, I plan to go through the amendments by bill rather than the usual numerical order found in your reference materials, and this should help you to follow the concept for each bill more easily. I'm also be providing amendment numbers for your reference. With each bill, I'll provide a brief overview and will show the amendments quickly, and in some cases only partially. We can come back at the end of the presentation. Because of formatting and authorship, amendments are shown in underlined strikeout as well as various colors, mostly red and purple. The first bill is House Bill 245, which revises a governing body's responsibilities concerning the submission, evaluation, and approval of a final plat. Amendments provide for time limits and notification procedures. Within 20 business days of accepting the final plat, staff must determine if it meets sufficiency requirements. Once it does, City Council has 20 more days to make a final decision. The bulk of the amendments for House Bill 245 occur in Article 4, subsection 070 in preliminary and final plats, determination of compliance, beginning with Amendment 33. This section clarifies our office has 20 days after accepting a final plat to determine if it meets all necessary criteria and notify the subdivider of that determination in writing. These amendments provide process direction if the application doesn't have the required information. The missing items must be identified for the applicant and no further action can be taken until the missing items are submitted. Review of subsequent submissions can only be made for items that were missing, and time limits apply to each submission until a determination is made that the plat contains what is required. An extension can be granted when the developer and the city agree to apply one. And the acceptance date section was clarified to state the date an application is formally accepted by the office will be the date the final plat with all required materials and fees is received by the office. The last amendment for House Bill 245 clarifies City Council has 20 working days to act on the final plat. This is Amendment 34. House Bill 416 required only one amendment, and it clarified that the findings of fact used in making a decision to approve, deny, or condition a subdivision must be based on the record as a whole. And this will be found in Amendment 28. In 2017, the legislature adopted House Bill 445, which primarily revised the regulations for phased development for projects approved after 2017 by requiring a phased development application to include information on all proposed phases and the schedule for review of each phase. All phases of a phased development must be submitted for review and acted on within 20 years of the date the preliminary plat is approved. A public hearing for the review of each phase must be held by the City Council to consider changed primary criteria impacts or new information for each phase, and allows the City Council to impose additional necessary conditions of approval on each phase. Changes in response to House Bill 445 were made in Articles 1, 2, 4, and 5. The first was an addition to the intent statement in Article 1, Amendment number 2. This amendment will include phased development in our local purpose statement. Amendment 6 in Article 2 will now have a definition of phased development. This amendment adds that definition to our local regulations and is slightly modified to make it easier to read in response to a comment we received. The addition of subsection 4 to the pre-application meeting requirements in the general provisions section will codify current practice for submittal content and require specific information to be provided at the time of a pre-application meeting. And that's Amendment 21. The bulk of amendments addressing House Bill 445 are made here in section 4-070, preliminary and final plats, where it has a lot to do with preliminary and final plat review procedures and how they're handled. Amendments reorganize and clarify existing language as well as remove language no longer relevant. The section has been expanded from the single existing section addressing phasing to 3 categories, including direction for non-phased development and the newly created subsections addressing phased development on and after May 8, 2017, and those prior to May 8, 2017. The regulations clarify pre-application requirements, effective periods, plat approval extensions, applicability, deadlines, and when a public hearing will be required. The rest of the specific language changes won't be shown here, but can be found in your reference document at number 32. If you have questions or want to discuss anything, we can come back later. With the addition of the new phase development regulations in Article 4, clarifying amendments have been included in Article 5 with Amendment 41. These submittal requirements apply to subdivisions requested after 2017 and include a cross-reference to the review procedures that apply to phase development post-2017. Senate Bill 219 revised laws related to exemptions for parcels used as security for mortgages, liens, and indentures. The word construction was removed and a cross-reference to state law was added. The amendment in section 8-040 was added during the comment period addressing a comment received and removes the word construction as well. And these amendments are numbers 53 and 57. The next set of bills were adopted in 2019. The first, House Bill 55, specifically addressed sanitation laws for subdivisions. In response, an amendment is included in section 5-020, making it clear the section applies to a subdivision if the development does not propose using a municipal facility. See Amendment 40 for that one. House Bill 124 addressed the change of use for existing agricultural covenants. In general, it requires a parcel with an agricultural covenant proposing to change use from agricultural to a non-agricultural use to go through subdivision review. The amendment also allows the governing body to remove an agricultural covenant in specific situations. Amendment 54 is made in section 8-030, the section for parcels exempt from plat filing and review. This amendment clarifies that a change in use on a parcel with an agricultural covenant to anything other than agricultural purposes subjects the division of land that received that specific exemption to subdivision review. Language is also included allowing the City Council to revoke exemptions under certain guidelines and conditions. If City Council chooses to remove an agricultural covenant, a public hearing must be held and a written decision must be recorded with the clerk and recorder. Clarifying amendments to address House Bill 124 were also made in section 8-040, shown in Amendment 56. The language makes it clear if a parcel with an ag exemption is used for something other than agricultural purposes, the parcel must go through subdivision review. Senate Bill 276 revised condominium and townhouse laws by exempting from subdivision review the conversion of an existing condominium development to a townhouse development. The project still needs to comply with zoning, and this is Amendment 30. House Bill 292 included a change of terminology from an abstract of title to a subdivision guarantee, and clarifying language of who a subdivision guarantee is issued by. Amendment 47 will clarify those items in the final plat supplement section of our regulations. House Bill 450 amended state law by exempting a 5-lot court-ordered subdivision from subdivision review. The change will occur in section 8-020, divisions exempt from review, survey and plat filing. Amendment 53. Senate Bill 161 is one of the more complex bills. It clarifies requirements for appeals of city council decisions, does not require a neighborhood meeting for expedited projects, and creates regulations and review procedures for the expedited review of subdivisions that meet certain requirements, including a prohibition to request a variance or deviation from any adopted regulation. Amendment number 3 clarifies an application for appeal of an expedited subdivision review must specify the grounds to challenge the decision, and any challenge must be submitted within 30 days from the date of written decision. And Amendment 22 will make it clear that expedited review is exempt from neighborhood meetings. Amendment 31 creates an entirely new section in response to Senate Bill 161. Again, this bill allows an expedited review for proposed subdivisions meeting specific criteria, including a requirement that the proposal is within the city limits, is in compliance with zoning, design standards, and other subdivision regulations without the need for variance of any kind. In addition, the project must include plans for on-site development of or extension to the public infrastructure. Projects that meet these criteria are exempt from specific review requirements like an environmental assessment and consideration of the primary review criteria. If a proposed development is meeting all the regulations and is appropriately planning for public infrastructure, the consideration of a proposed subdivision should be very straightforward. A public hearing is still required whether a project is a minor or a major subdivision, and notice of the proposed subdivision will be a legal ad and information on the Engage Missoula website. The decision on an expedited review is accomplished within 35 business days from the time the proposed subdivision is considered sufficient to the final decision by the City Council. And the language in subsection 0.1a has been amended slightly from the agency draft in response to a comment received. The rest of this section will not be shown during the presentation, but again, if you have questions, we can come back to it. Provisions for when a governing body requires mitigation during subdivision review were amended in state law in 2021 with Senate Bill 174. Proposed language modifies the criteria local governing bodies must consider when making a decision and are requiring mitigation of impacts. It prohibits the governing body from approving development covenants unless they directly impact the condition of approval to the subdivision, and requires any condition applied to a subdivision to identify a documentable and defined purpose or objective in the primary review criteria to support it. Amendments are made in Article 4, beginning with Amendment 25 and mitigation of impacts. The amendment for Senate Bill 174 is shown in green, and it refers a user to subsection 0.14, City Council decision and documentation. The purple is an amendment prompted by Senate Bill 211, which will be the next bill I discuss. There are 3 more slides with proposed changes to the regulations affecting general provisions for all major and minor subdivisions, and they occur in the City Council decision and documentation section. This first clarifies the governing body can review development covenants, but cannot amend them unless they directly impact the condition of subdivision approval. And this is Amendment 26. The second clarifies the condition of a conditionally approved subdivision need to be specific, documentable, and clearly defined, and is Amendment 27. The third amendment for Senate Bill 174 is Amendment number 28 and is shown here in blue. The language clarifies council's approval of a proposed subdivision is approval of the preliminary plat packet as amended by conditions. Reiterates findings must be based on the record as a whole, and conditions must be specific, documentable, and clearly defined. And changes to subsection B and D further clarify the process of providing background regarding the city council decision of a conditioned subdivision. Senate Bill 211 prohibits a governing body from considering the loss of ag soils in their decision. It also prohibits requiring a set aside of land or monetary contribution for the loss of agricultural soils as a form of mitigation. These amendments take us back to the mitigation section of Article 4 with Amendment 25. Language changes prohibit the set aside of land or monetary contribution for the loss of agricultural soils. Amendments also allow the city council to decide which factors to weigh more heavily when making a decision concerning mitigation. Changes addressing Senate Bill 211 in city council decision and documentation appear in red and clarify again the prohibition of considering the loss of ag soils. This is Amendment 27. Amendments shown in purple were made in response to Senate Bill 174 as previously explained. Amendment 38 is the last amendment for Senate Bill 211 with changes in Article 5. Again, clarifying mitigation of impacts cannot be based on the loss of agricultural soils. The city of Missoula is subject to various regulations administered by the Department of Environmental Quality, including Circular 8, Montana Standards for Subdivision Stormwater Drainage. In 2017, Circular 8 was amended regarding the amount of water runoff that must be addressed in various storm events. These DEQ changes require local regulations to be updated as well. Changes in the subdivision regulations will occur in Article 3 under grading, drainage, and erosion control. Amendment 14 will address rainfall intensities in a 24-hour period, as well as peak runoff for 10 and 100-year storm events. Changes will also occur in Article 5 in grading and drainage with Amendment 39. No comments were received from the general public. However, comments were received from 4 agencies. The Public Works and Mobility Office said they had no comment. The Missoula Urban Transportation District expressed their support in establishing a process for phased subdivision review. They stated that requiring phasing information as part of the preliminary plat review will help ensure all phases of a subdivision meet the same conditions for approval. Missoula Parks and Recreation proposed language changes to help clarify specific proposed amendments, and staff incorporated those changes in instances we felt it didn't change the intent of the law. And the Missoula County Clerk and Treasurer provided comments on the proposed state law changes, as well as the entire subdivision regulations document. So as I just said, the county clerk and treasurer not only commented on the proposed amendment package, but also commented on the existing subdivision regulations document as a whole. All of their comments have been reviewed and evaluated with many suggested changes for the entire document, noting outdated recording practices, amendments to address future changes in process, and suggested changes to standardize language. A majority of the comments have been incorporated, and the remaining comments will be added to a list of proposed amendments for the code reform project and will be reviewed during that process. Suggested changes that will be incorporated into these amendments include language that will help move the subdivision approval process from a paper system to an electronic system by reducing the number of paper copies submitted and requiring a digital copy be provided. The recording office no longer requires plats to be submitted to them on pieces of Mylar, so that requirement is being removed. And outdated terminology will be removed and replaced by the term platting report. And these are amendments 23, 36, and 46. Section 8-030.6, parcels of land 160 acres in size or larger will be removed from the regulations with Amendment 55 because the state changed the definition of a subdivision and the regulations are no longer relevant. State law no longer allows an exemption called a remainder parcel, so that option will be removed with Amendment 59. And existing language will be amended, making it clear a security interest exemption can only be used by the security interest holder. This is also found in Amendment 59. Slides for these amendments haven't been included in the presentation, but if you have questions, I'm happy to address them. The Planning Board held a public hearing on June 21st and voted unanimously to recommend City Council adopt the amendments as presented by staff. And this slide is showing you where we are in the timeline of the project. After tonight, the project will go to the Land Use and Planning Committee for review this coming Wednesday, and will return to the City Council floor on July 18th for final consideration, and a suggested motion will be provided then. And that ends my presentation. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Jen. First, we will call for public comment if there's any comment on this item. And I do see one raised hand. Mr. Larson.
Yeah, there seems to be an issue with the website. There's no ability for the public to comment on agenda items. I tried to comment on the budget earlier, and I emailed Carlino about that, the accounts payable, and there's no way to comment on the budgets, the accounts payable.
Thank you for the input. We're actually taking comment on the.
Yeah, I know you
us
can't
right
comment on this item either.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, any other public comment? Seeing none, are there any questions from council for Ms. Gress? Seeing none, we will keep this item held open. We will be hearing it in committee on Wednesday and then final consideration on July 18th. Okay, we are done with our public hearings. We have no committee reports. Any new business from any counselor to bring forth? Seeing none, I will pass on communications from the mayor and we'll go to general comments of city council members, and we'll start with Ms. West.
I've got nothing.
Mr. Carlino.
Yeah, just wanted to speak to the one public commenter during general comments today, Mr. Seymour's comment about the easement on Wednesday. And I want to point out that part of the housing policy for the city is to help preserve currently affordable rentals and or currently affordable housing. And I just would be curious for us all to look more into how this might apply to our housing policy here.
Mr. Nugent.
Pass.
Ms. Anderson.
I will also pass.
Ms. Vasiga.
I will pass as well. Thanks.
Ms. Jordan.
Passing, thank you.
Okay, and going to our virtual attendees, Ms. Becerra.
Pass. Thank you.
Mr. Jordan. I'm sorry, Mr. Hess. It's the double name. I'm sorry, that was Mr. Hess.
Problem. I'm looking at the agenda and the leave comment button is available to me on all the agenda items. So I'm unclear what the previous comment was about, but I just wanted to note that for the record, and maybe Marty could scrutinize that a little more closely and make sure that that's the case, but it shows up on my agenda as it always has.
Ms. Cheryl.
I'm going to pass. Thank you.
I think I got everyone that is virtually attending. Yes. Okay. Thank you, everyone. We have no miscellaneous communications reports or announcements, so we will be adjourned.